Well, when I first came, the school was on half sessions. And so Vern Quimby was the principal of the high school, and, oh dear, what was his name? No, it wasn't Gordon Cato. Oh dear. What?
Les Goodrich.
Oh, Les Goodrich, of course, I should have remembered that. Les Goodrich was the principal of the elementary school. And we used to teach from 8 to 12, and then we'd have an hour for lunch, and then we used to go into like the broom closet or whatever closet to tutor kids in the afternoon. But it was a great time. I enjoyed that very much.
Did you teach any grades?
Yes, I taught second grade when we were in half sessions. When we went on full session, they asked me to be the art teacher. I had taught art previously in Lunenburg. So I really, really loved teaching art at Spaulding School.
And how many years did you teach second grade? Just the one?
Oh no, I think it was 3 or 4, while they were waiting for the new school, North Middlesex, to be built.
Was there any outstanding teachers that you remember?
Oh yes, I remember Ruth Brooks, who was a marvelous teacher, and Mrs. Minahan, and Thelma Jenny, and Mrs. Aho was so good too. It was such fun to go into their rooms at that time. Let's see, the school was grade 1 to 6 at that time, I think. Yeah. Thelma taught 4th grade, I think.
Yeah.
And Butch Bonnier and Kenny Goss taught 6th grade. And I had a little closet downstairs. There was no art room, so I used to have to lug the art materials around. And the funny part about that was if you got up here on the 3rd floor and you had forgotten the paintbrushes, well, forget it. But it was fun. I usually had some nice little kid I could send down to the room together.
Someone you trusted?
Right.
Was there anything special about Spaulding?
Well, I think there was always a special feeling among the Spaulding teachers. I've taught in other schools and other systems, and I don't know, there was a closeness, I think, in this school that you don't get in too many schools.
Any memorable events that you remember?
Well, one time I remember a teacher, a little older at that time, she used to make me wait in the hall if I was 2 minutes early, and finally she let me in. And she was a very strict teacher, and she taught 6th grade. And one of her rules was that the little girls could not leave their pocketbooks on the desk. Well, one day some little girl left her pocketbook on the desk, and she came over and threw it out the window. And it was springtime, the windows were open, and who was walking up the path but Mr. Bullis? The pocketbook landed right in front of him. It was really funny. Of course, when you go around from room to room like I did, and I think the music teacher did at that time too, you do see a lot of interesting things going on in the classrooms. The last few years that I taught, I did have a regular classroom, and that was really great, because I could get everything ready the night before. Although I do remember that the radiator came down in that room one day while I had class lined up outside. Already it was the 1st grade, and we heard this crash, and at that time the radiator was up on the wall. Crashed right down on the table. It really would have hit the children if they'd been in the room.
You were going to tell about a little boy in one of the classes.
Oh, one little, yes, one teacher, an older teacher, ready for retirement, had a little problem with hearing, and she didn't realize that there was a little boy running around the room. When I came in, he was running under all the desk. That was kind of fun to see. Oh, and there were so many interesting kids, too, all through the years, and at that time, Townsend was a smaller town, and you knew every kid because you'd had their sister or their brother, and you knew every family. It has certainly changed, I think, the last few years.
Well, you were one of the popular teachers with the children and the teachers also. You had a nice way with the children.
Well, you know, I certainly didn't have any discipline problems because the kids loved art, and the same with music, I'm sure. And oftentimes I used to take Oh, a discipline problem at lunchtime, so we wouldn't be out on the playground. And really, some of the toughest kids would be just sweethearts when they were in the art room because they just enjoyed using all the different materials and everything.
I'm afraid you couldn't have had much trouble with them.
No. I think I had one boy I dragged down to Norman one time. He said a bad word, I think. But otherwise, most children love art. Even if they're not artistic, they don't realize that at that age either. They just love to come in and fool around with the paints and the clay and all that kind of thing. And people were very generous in town. They gave us all kinds of pieces of wood and, you know, leftover yarn. And I had some lady that saved egg cartons for us. So I had a great store of supplies.
That's great. Well, I remember substituting for you. And
oh, that's right.
All the children enjoyed your class so much. I never had any trouble with them. They're used to behaving there.
Right. And it was a fun time for the kids.
You encouraged them always. You never discouraged any of them about that.
Oh, I hope I didn't. I think that's what art is all about, is encouraging. Well, I have got to tell you about a fun thing we did at Spaulding. We had a group called the Nitwits, and we used to meet after school once a week on Wednesdays. I think it was Ethel and Miro that got us started, and we'd all bring our knitting or our sewing, and we'd sit around and have the best time. I think it was Ann Forsman and Jan Steimel, Lois Thatcher, and Ethel, and myself. It seems to me there was somebody else. I think it might have been Judy Horgan. But we had a wonderful time, and we really did make afghans and do all kinds of fun things. And we put a quarter a week aside, and then when we had enough money to go out to dinner, we'd all go out to dinner.
It could take a long time.
Well, nowadays you could get a pretty good meal for $5 or whatever.
Yeah.
And then eventually we had other courses. We played bridge one day a week. And then I got Jan Brown from Leominster, and she came over and gave us a lampshade course. And practically everybody took that. It was just a fun thing. So we did have a lot of fun outside of school, too. And Ann Forsman and Jan and I ran a bus into Boston. We took trips on Saturdays. We'd hire Ryan Amy's bus, and we had a lot of things to look forward to.
And you had a day when everyone brought their crafts.
Yeah, we had a craft and artistic day.
Oh, all the crafts
That's
that all the
right.
teachers made.
Oh, and of course we made the quilt. Well, it was the year Townsend had its bicentennial, yeah. And we did all the buildings in town. And I had a 6th grade at the time, and the kids did the designs of the buildings, different buildings, and somebody did Spaulding. I think it was Aletta Rice. And then if possible, the mother did the embroidery on it. And then we put it together. And it really, I think it's hanging now in the Historical Society. It has all the different buildings of towns and the churches and the parks. And,
We did too.
yes, we did too. You worked on one, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Sure. The bandstand. And,
one was Raffle
yeah.
and the other's in the library somewhere.
Right. I think it's in the library or something.
Conrad's got it.
Yeah. That was very, and somebody did the little red bag down there. It was awfully cute. And they used red and white gingham for the bricks. It was really, and I think the kids enjoyed that. In fact, I think Richard Smith, in his book on Townsend, mentioned that quilt. I think there's a picture of it in that book.
And another project was rubbing all the gravestones.
Oh, yes, we rubbed all the gravestones in the old cemetery, and all the kids just loved that. We walked down and we used the white crayons and cut them out afterward. And I think a lot of the kids have picked that up as kind of a hobby and where they go around to the old places. I know I often do rubbing now because of that.
Really?
Yeah, Damascata, where we are in the summer, has a nice old cemetery.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. I enjoyed it. It'll be interesting to see what they're going to do with this building. Yeah.
I'm Bob Tumba. I was the class of '44 at Spaulding Memorial. Our class was the original 12-year class. We started the school in the opening year of 1932 and completed our 12 years at the 1944. Principal was Hamilton Bailey. They were two principals when they opened when the school opening in 1932. Mr. Bailey was a principal of a great respect. He had great respect for the students. In fact, the one thing that comes to mind, he wore leather heels on his shoes. And if you heard the click of the leather heels coming through the hall, you could hear a pin drop in the classroom. That was one thing that comes to mind. I think every student in that year, of those years, will remember that, because that was his trademark. Miss Brooks was our third grade teacher. She was a very, I would say, a very caring teacher. One thing that comes to mind about Miss Brooks was at the end of the school year, at the end of the ball field towards where the houses are on, I can't think of the name of the street. Eastman Street now. Eastman Street was nothing more than a cart road then. And there was all the wooded area there. And at the end of the school year, she always, on her own, would take us out there the last day of school and have cookies and ice cream for every kid in the class. And I think every class that she ever had at that time. Now you got to remember, these are the Depression years, and probably a little hoodsie that we paid, now we probably pay 50 cents for, or even $1, was probably about 3 cents. But she made sure that we had that little party at the end of the school year for all of her children in her class.
How about sports? Now, sports big?
Now, sports, when you get up into the 7th grade, that's when the sports came into play. We had what we called intramural sports, and basketball and baseball. Baseball and basketball actually were the only two sports in the school, because if you got to be reminded that there was about approximately 300 to 350 to maybe 400 kids in the whole school, grades 1 through 12. The average class was probably 29. So if you didn't have the amount of people to pick from to play a diversified sports calendar, if you want to use the term. So basketball and baseball were our big sports, but basketball was the sport of Spaulding during that era. I know during the February vacation, probably around the Valentine's Day week, the school would host what they called the small high school basketball tournament. Okay, now this is the basketball team that was the championship team back in 38, I believe 38 and 39. And if you'll notice right here, I think you'll see right there is a fellow by the name of Willis Keefe, who's one of our old postmen. This is the girls' team, the girls' basketball team. Let me get this straightened out, make sure, of 1944 and 45. They were a championship. They had a championship team, as you can see. Some of these trophies are part of their winning team. Now this is the basketball team who had a couple of they were trophy winners also in 1945 and 46. And this young man here is Doug Larson, and this is Mark Giles. He used to live in town, and now he's since moved. Bob Dick, Harold Dick's son, over from South Row Road. This is Louis Schultz, who was they lived in Mason again, and they came down on a tuition basis on the high school from Mason, New Hampshire. And this is Bob Farah. We know Bobby when he runs the donut shop here in town and the ice cream shop. Mark McKenzie, he lived right on behind the library in one of those apartments there. There's Mr. Quimby. He was the coach at the time. And this young man here is Bill Matten, Rod Matten's younger brother. And this fellow here is John Coffey, and he's the brother of the Dick Coffey that I mentioned earlier about being a doctor. This fellow here is Peter Racine, who lives now out in Chicago area. And this fellow here is Frankie Perriner, young Frankie Perriner. And this is Morris Solomon. He was the manager, and his father and mother used to had a grocery store from West Townsend, where the White Store is now, and that's Morris there. This is one of the trophies that we won back in these, as I spoke to you about the small high school tournament. This was a tournament, Townsend was the tournament winner in 1939, and this trophy was given by the Legion Post of Townsend, Franz Waldo Miller Post, and that was in 1939 that we won that tournament. And this was the trophy that was presented to us. This trophy here was a Littleton started a tournament after ours kind of faded away during the war years. It was kind of faded away, and Littleton picked up a tournament, and this was it was a girls tournament, and they had two divisions, girls and boys division, and we were the champions down in the Littleton tournament in 1955. The girls won this trophy. And then we had what they called a small high school tournament at Clark University in Worcester. And these tournaments were kind of we looked forward to those because we traveled. We traveled to these tournaments. It was something that, you know, when you're in a small town, if you got out of town, it was a big to-do, so to speak. And so we got on the bus and traveled to Clark University. And this tournament here, we won the trophy, and it was in 1945. And we had they had a Class A division, depending on the size of the school. It was Class A, Class B, and Class C. And of course, Townsend, being a small school, was a Class C school. And lo and behold, we won the Class C trophy that year as the tournament champions.
I am Carol Russell. I graduated from college in 1931 and went to work in Townsend schools and began teaching at Spaulding in the fall of '33 when it opened. And I taught there as long as high school was in session at Spaulding. Went to North Middlesex in the fall of '61.
And when did you retire?
I retired in '71
Very good.
from North Middlesex.
Who was the superintendent and the principal?
We had only two principals during that time. First Hamilton Bailey and then Vern Quimby. When Spaulding opened, I went up there as a fourth grade teacher, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. But I had trained to teach mathematics, and I really wanted to have a high school job, so I had the opportunity of moving to high school. And in the beginning, I had junior high homeroom and quite a number of subjects in junior high, as well as a little bit of math in high school. But gradually, I worked into teaching math. But I always taught senior history as well, even the whole time that I was at Spaulding. It was a small enough school so that we felt very close to one another, and the students respected the teachers, but we were more or less free to enjoy times with them as well. And,
Like family, maybe?
Yes, it was like a big family. It was very nice because it was small. I found that when I went down to North Middlesex, it was so large that, well, I felt for the students, I think they don't get that intimate relationship that I think is important. I was senior class advisor for some years, and one of the big things was preparing for graduation. And we had as you know, the tradition of laurel arches that the juniors held for the seniors to pass through with graduation. And we always started planning our program at least by February. They had to write essays, and so I was busy planning graduation from February through to June. And I didn't have to do anything for the juniors. Another teacher had charge of them, but they gathered laurel, which was one of the joys of doing that, to run out into the woods and gather laurel. And we got staves from the mill, and then they attached them to sticks so that these laurel arches went way up over the aisle, and the juniors, well, all classes marched in. The juniors would come in with their arches and stand at intervals the whole aisle up the center, and then the seniors marched in under them. And it was one of those traditions that was really beautiful, and everybody looked forward to it every year. And there was always the fun parts of graduation, like the class will and the class prophecy, and then always an essay or two. And when the classes were small, everyone in the class had a part. But of course, they got larger and larger, so we had to be a bit choosy about it.
There's a list of the school committee there. Would you like to read those?
The school committee, 33, the first one in Spaulding. The school committee was Mrs. Hattie M. Davis, chairman, Mrs. Ellen M. Whitcomb, Cornelius P. Keefe, Alden P. Sherwin, Roswell A. Lancey, Mrs. Leela Hayward. Roswell Lancey, of course, was responsible for getting Spaulding School, actually. He was associated with the Spaulding brothers and had a great deal to do with the building.
Oh, he was the clerk of the works.
So I guess so. I don't know whether he went by that title. I think so, yeah.
Goodness, we yes indeed.